Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Pure Digital Passion Podcast with me, Moses Kemibaro. My guest today is George Makori, the head of digital innovation at Jubilee Insurance, who today is going to share with us the journey that they've taken to develop their great and new innovation called JForce. This is an app that is targeting the agency community that the insurance company uses to sell its products across health insurance. But more importantly, the fact that they want to use this app as a way to onboard and remove the paper-based processes that have not just made it time-consuming, but also expensive in the distribution of their health insurance offerings. Going forward, George is also going to share with us a little bit more around their strategies in the digital transformation space as Jubilee Insurance, and also more specifically how they plan to make sure that all their agents are onboarded on this new JForce app within the shortest time possible. Thank you so much for joining us, George.
Thanks for having me, Moses.
So, George, you and I have a bit of history. I think we've known each other for a number of years, correct?
Correct.
And I'd like for the audience who are watching this conversation, maybe you can give us a little bit of your backstory, how you started, how you got into technology, and more importantly, how you got to Jubilee and doing what you do today.
All right. So how it started, I started off as a coder about 16, 17 years ago.
Wow.
I think for those who don't know, if you remember the blue screens,
yeah, the blue screen of death.
Of death, yes. So I was writing code in a language called Pascal.
No way.
And Visual Basic. So I started off as a coder. So I've been in telco. I spent half of my career in the telco space. So I started off in Airtel, just doing normal billing systems and setting up intelligent networks.
Okay.
Then spent a bit of time in Safaricom.
Okay.
Running the innovations department. So we were basically the think tank for Safcom.
Okay.
So we build a lot of innovations, Okoa Jahazis, Lipa na M-Pesa.
Oh, you're involved in all of that stuff?
Yes.
So I think you need to write a book, eh?
Yeah, I think I'm about to write a book considering I've joined the OG space. So telco has been my bread and butter.
Okay.
Basically just driving innovations. Then I've done a stint in government. And in banking.
Okay.
Then I ended up in insurance. I also tried a bit of startups. But
I see.
My startup, the big valley of death, where startups go to die.
Over 90% of startups fail, so it's a challenging space to operate in.
So then I joined Jubilee about 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
Tasked with driving innovation across the group, because we have about 7 entities across the region.
Great.
Yeah.
So obviously there must have been an appeal to join the insurance industry. What did you see there that you thought would take advantage of your experiences and your skill sets?
So first is the 2.4% penetration of insurance in the country. So that's one area, because I've bought insurance before.
Yeah.
And it was through an intermediary. So I had to fill papers. And then when I got an accident, because it was general, the claim process took almost 3-4 months.
Wow.
So one of the motivations was around how do I bring what I've learned from the telcos and from the banks and try and apply it to see if we can increase penetration across the insurance sector by trying to provide innovations that make registration easier, claims management, subscription to products, and things like embedded products in the insurance sector.
So some of the things that I really find so intriguing about Jubilee, I think, as an organization, because over the years I've interacted with also your colleagues, I've been at the various conferences, and I think you're clearly one of the most progressive insurance organizations in the region. But I think for me, I'd like to hear a little bit more before we get specifically into JForce around how Jubilee approaches digital transformation, because I believe you're embedding it across so many of your business processes. And this sort of has greatly enhanced, service delivery, but also just operational efficiencies as well.
Yes. So I think about 3 years ago, the board made a deliberate decision to invest in digital transformation. So they set aside some funds to drive digital. I think it was about $20 million.
Wow.
That is primarily to just spur and drive digital transformation across the group. So that's one key aspect, is there's buy-in from the board. Secondly, they've also set up centers of excellence to try and drive. So for example, the first center of excellence that was set up was robotics. So insurance is predominantly a very manual, back office heavy process. So how do you automate mundane tasks, to just release people to stop doing document uploads, document processing. So that's one. Secondly, the digital transformation around the group is anchored around what we call Changamka, which is now like giving that digital transformation an identity.
Fantastic.
And then there are certain pillars across. So the first pillar is data. So we have a pillar called data, where we're trying to see how do we get data across the 7 entities into some sort of a data lake. That way you can then have one reference for your customers across.
And really bringing all those pieces together.
Yes, that's one. Second is around cloud. So we're the first insurance company in the region to be 100% cloud.
Wow. So at a time when people are still holding on to their own premise.
Yes. So we do not have any physical data center.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
Wow.
So we're 100% cloud for multi. Some workloads run off Azure, some workloads run off OCI, and some run off AWS. So we 100% cloud.
Fantastic.
Then now comes the other pillar, which we call One Jubilee, which is now how do you create that 360 view of the customer?
And this, of course, builds into the customer experience approach.
So now things like JForce become part of that agenda. So you have a CRM that you can see if I own a health policy and I have a life pension product. When I call the call center, the agent should be able to serve me because they have a view of all the products that I have.
In its entirety, as far as the relationship is concerned.
Correct.
Fantastic.
Yes, so those are the pillars that we're trying to drive digital transformation across. And then there's the robotics bit I mentioned.
Yes.
So we're trying ideally to be a data company in another 4 or 5 years.
Fantastic.
That's the idea.
So I want us to get now to the meat of our conversation, which is JForce. I was with yourselves, I believe, last month when it was launched. I happened to have the opportunity also to moderate the panel. But I'd like to understand 2 pieces around JForce. Number one, what is it and what problem does it hope to solve, or the problems it hopes to solve? And then secondly, I'd like to understand the journey around building it and actually creating this new proposition, because as I understand it from the launch, when you had a bit of a conversation with you, it was quite a process. But I'd like to just hear around that and the fact that, again, you developed it completely and wholly right here in Kenya. Is that correct?
And so we have, the model is, we got somebody to assist in the development. Okay. So I'll just walk you through the journey. But to answer your first question, so a lot of businesses in the insurance sector are driven through intermediaries. So I think more than 60 to 70% is intermediary driven. So agents, brokers, the banks help in selling.
Okay, the bank assurance side, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
So the idea around things like JForce is how do you assist the intermediaries, one, become more operational efficient. So if I sit with a customer, I can close the sale in a matter of minutes. That's one. 2, on servicing. So if a customer, because most customers, when you sell insurance, is through an agent. So your claims will ideally come through the agent. So you want to empower the agent to be able to raise those claims on your behalf and also track the process of those claims. And thirdly is their commissions that they earn. So I need to have visibility of how I'm making my commissions and if I want to cash them out. So right now the process is slightly longer when it's manual because somebody has to calculate and then finance has to approve and then the payments have to be made. It can take up to 14 days. Okay. So we want to make sure you have visibility. As soon as you sell, your commissions are calculated and you can see them instantly on the app.
Okay.
So that's one. So the journey on how we did it, the first bit is we actually faltered in the first attempt because we tried it and we didn't get to where we are. So the journey has taken quite a while, almost 2 years.
Wow. Because
we had to restart the project based on we got somebody who was unable to deliver.
Okay.
So then we went back to the drawing board and said, okay, fine, how do we restructure, get proper requirements and get the right teams to be able to help us deliver? So we've built JForce with an InsurTech actually.
Aha.
Yes.
So they've provided a sort of a stack that sits on top of your own data and your platforms as well.
Yes, correct. So we have an InsurTech who's done it in Jubilee, Pakistan.
Okay.
Because we have businesses there.
Okay.
So they have a slight experience in how they've built the apps, but we have done some customizations locally to be able to feed our market.
Okay.
So in terms of the journey is one, define the stack that we're using, then have a lot of sessions with the users. So we had to get a few agents, the business teams to be able to come in, the UI UX guys doing your focus groups, and
okay, so design thinking basically.
Design thinking, so that as you build, you're exposing what is being built and collecting feedback iteratively as you go on.
I imagine the voice of the agent or the broker was very instrumental to what you have today.
Yes, because I sat in one of those sessions as we were building, and it was more of a a light bulb moment, because what you think the agent wants is primarily not what you're building until you interact with the agent and they tell you you need to adjust this, because for me to be able to deliver value for you, I need you to change this process. So it was a bit of iterative and involvement with all the stakeholders across.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I know, and again, I've had the benefit of interacting with many insurance companies over the years through my agency as well, is that there's always seemingly had this reputation for insurance being almost a bit lethargic, let's say, compared to banking when it comes to the adoption of technology. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I do believe you're one of the more progressive ones in the market. But especially also from the stakeholder perspective, now in terms of agents and brokers, how are you working through helping them sort of adopt these new technology-driven propositions? And more importantly, I think, unless I'm mistaken, but they've historically been somewhat technology resistant as a stakeholder.
Yeah, so that's very correct. So one of the things in any digital transformation program is you look at the three facets. So you have your people, your technology, and your processes. So one of the things, the toughest bit to change is the people, because these are people who are used to doing things in a certain way. So Jubilee Insurance has been there since 1937.
Yeah.
So that's a big elephant that can't really dance. So one is there has to be some change. So you will change the technology, introduce new things, align the processes. So some processes you might have to do away with. So properly either re-engineer them or kill them at once. And for the people bit is more of engagement. So you have your POCs, your prototypes, showing value by incremental development. And then where there is, of course, resistance, which is normal in any digital transformation, is then you can make the tough choice of realigning roles. So what we're doing right now from a digital transformation is we are able to measure. So assuming we come into the claims process, for example, and then we find it takes 72 or more hours to adjust to a claim. If we introduce either robotics or some portals in the middle, we're able to measure that this process is being done by 5 people. If we introduce a bot, it can be the 5 people can now be reassigned to other roles. And the interesting thing is we are doing claims adjudication using AI. So we do at least 12,000 claims in a day.
What?
Yes.
It's all robotic.
It's all AI driven. So
and is there some oversight that people are providing, or when red flags are raised?
So the exceptions is what now you forward to the clinical officers.
Okay.
But a lot of AI is you're training the model to learn every day.
Wow. Yeah. It's actually getting smarter.
Yes.
Understanding precedents.
Yes.
And presumably, it's machine learning and all this that's happening as well.
Correct.
So I imagine the cost savings and efficiencies that are happening there are crazy, yeah?
Yeah. The cost savings are quite ridiculous, because there is the cost savings in the man hours, and then the cost saving in having to have 50 people looking at claims every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're very much a very digitally transformed organization from that standpoint, yeah?
Yes, it's been a leap, and I think things like this podcast get to tell our story, because I think one of the things we've gotten feedback is we don't really tell our story very well from
that
true. Perspective. So I think this is a start, because when I go for those conferences, people say, you guys are doing this, because I've been able to speak in many of these CIO events, and when you talk about what we're doing, then people are like, okay.
Yeah, I remember. Actually, it's so interesting. I think 2 years ago in Mombasa, I was talking to your colleagues in the CIO conference, and I kept telling them I couldn't believe you guys were doing RPA. I couldn't believe it's fully integrated and operation, because up until that point, many conversations were the promise of this, whereas you guys have actually deployed it, And I think that's really fantastic and commendable.
Yep.
Yeah. So coming back again to JForce, I mean, it's been roughly maybe a month and a bit. I'd like to kind of understand what's been the journey so far since it was launched. Are you seeing adoption? What does the roadmap look going forward? Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's been about close to a month
Yeah.
since we went into the market. So there's been quite some positive feedback. So we are almost getting to 100% adoption of our agency
Already?
network. Yes. This is because it cuts down. So as an agent, one of the advantages is I have visibility of my leads. I have visibility of what I'm selling, and it makes the process much, much faster. And because it's tech-based, if there's an issue, we then have a dedicated support team. So that's one. Two, in terms of driving sales, I think it will be a very, very good tool to increase, either even attract new agents to be able to come in and self-sign. And we're receiving feedback from the agency network on what amendments to be able to do.
Additional enhancements going forward.
Yes.
So it's actually a bit of a moving target. You got this point, but you plan to keep innovating and enhancing it.
Yeah. So like the whole idea is to have, like I was discussing with you earlier, is have a wallet where, because right now you can see your commissions as an agent.
Okay.
So we are thinking of how do I monetize that? So we're thinking of having ideas where you can opt into a money market product. So you move your commissions and start earning instantly on the money market product. That way, the value stays in the ecosystem. And then the agent can see value because you have real-time access. Two, there's analytics and a bit of AI that we have trying to deploy.
Okay.
So that assuming you're doing a sale, and from the back end, I can see you're falling off at quotations. You're not really closing the sale. I can then recommend trainings on how to close a sale. So those are the sort of dynamics we're trying to apply, integrating to our learning management system, so that I can recommend training programs based on how you are interacting with the platform.
And I'm guessing this is again automated in a manner that works.
So it will tell you, Moses, you've been dropping off at quotations. Maybe we need to recommend a course on how to close a sale. Or you have too many prospects, so I need to train you on certain, upskill you on a certain skill. So that's now the dynamics that we're building.
So more proactive as opposed to
proactive, so that now we can now start grading the agents in terms of their capability. So I'm assuming I'll give you a 5-star rating if your closure rate is at 85% and you're generating X number of quotations. So if I move you from a 2-star to a 5-star, there are certain benefits that you unlock.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So even a bit of gamification going on.
That's now what we want to do.
Fantastic. And as we spoke earlier before we did this podcast, I think you gave me a very ambitious objective for the adoption of JForce. Can you just maybe tell our audience what that looks like going forward?
Well, the adoption is, you see, because like you mentioned earlier, adoption in insurance can be a bit slow. So we are a bit aggressive with the adoption in terms of we have a cutoff, possibly by end of this month, to achieve 100% adoption. So all our agents signed up and no papers are moving around the organization in terms of sales acquisitions.
So that's it. You're either on the system or you're not in order to operate.
Yes.
So you're going to do an e-citizen basically to them.
Yeah. Because you see, if you look at e-citizen, what happened is people adopted because they had no choice.
Yeah.
It was the only service, because now if you want a passport, there's no longer going to get papers.
Okay.
So it's the same approach.
So going forward, what can people expect, the market, where JForce is concerned? What are the impacts that they can expect from this? I'm thinking more in terms of broader stakeholders, the agent or intermediary community. What can we expect going forward with JForce?
So the other thing is what we can expect is more services. So addition of more capabilities on the platform. That's one. Two, addition of more integration to other platforms and ecosystems. So we have a wellness app that we call My Shafiti.
Oh, nice.
Which we are thinking of how to build around that ecosystem. So assuming I'm an agent, but also I'm a customer. So we want to be able to interlink the two so that you benefit. You can cross-sell. So if I'm an agent, I can cross-sell. I can acquire more services. I can get discounts. Because now with the wellness program, depending on steps count, I can get a discount on my policy. So those are things we're trying to do.
Wow. So more and more capabilities, more use cases.
Correct.
Fantastic. And if somebody maybe is an agent or somebody who's interested in using JForce, how can they onboard? How do they start that journey?
So there are two. We have deployed it both on web and mobile. So you just go to the Play Store and you download the JForce app. If you're an existing agent, you'll receive an activation code. And just because we already have your details, you'll just continue to change your password and sign up and start transacting. If you go to jforce.jubileeinsurance.com, you'll have the web version. Same process. So once you log in and you sit in front of a customer, you can complete the sale.
Fantastic. And maybe as we come to the end of our conversation, I'd just like to ask you maybe one or two more questions. One, I think, is given the sheer scale and ambition of JForce, what are the lessons learned? What would you want? Because what I always tend to find is that sometimes people build applications in the marketplace, as we know here, but sometimes it feels like they're building a solution looking for a problem, meaning that they don't come from the reverse, which is there actually a problem? And you're building a solution that then can scale and so forth. And I think based on what you've told us, you spent a lot of time speaking to the stakeholders to understand their issues, and then you built an app around that. So are there any lessons learned or key takeaways maybe the audience can hear, the other people are developers, maybe other business organizations that can learn from the process that you went through?
Yeah, so picking on the innovation process, so you can either have a pull innovation or a push. So the pull is where it comes from the users.
Okay.
And then you innovate around it. And push is where you develop it and try and push it to the customer. So for JForce is a blend of two. Because these agents are used to a certain process of how they do things. So what we're doing is, how do you make the process more efficient? Because I know the process as an agent. I know how to sell. I know how to do my work as an agent. So it's a blend. So one of the lessons is have the right people in the room when you're building any product or any app.
All the key stakeholders.
Just have the right people in the room. Two, I think that we tried is agile. Agile is something that, some people say it's dead. Some people say it can still be used, but so it's a blend. Because what we've learned in deploying it in Jubilee is still not mature enough for agile. So we did a waterfall approach, but a blend of both, because when we build, for example, you finish the registration and lead management module, you expose that to a focus group, and then you get feedback.
So you iterate that way.
You iterate that way. So, but at the end, you deploy a whole solution. But you break the deliveries in sprints, where you have the business review each sprint. But they don't actively use it in the market, but they have a feel of what is coming, so they can give you feedback. So that's another key lesson, is have the right people in the room. Third is, of course, get the right partners. Yeah, you have to find a partner who has the right vision and is quite agile. So we're dealing with an insurtech. So they're quite agile because they're small. So it's easy to tell them, change this, let's rework this. So it's quite fast to iterate and get things done than having these big corporates to work and partner with you to build such apps.
Fantastic. George, thank you so much for this conversation. I think the insights that you've imparted here are incredible. And also personally, I'm really excited to see how JForce becomes essentially the operating system for your agents and brokers. And more importantly, I think just how this innovates the way that insurance is going to be sold and distributed through your intermediaries within the marketplace. I think going forward, it'll be great to see also some of those new features and functionalities that you've told us about. And I think ultimately we'd like to wish you all the best going forward. And we're looking to see more and more great things coming from Jubilee Insurance.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And look out in the market for additional features.
Great stuff.
Thanks.
So there you've heard it from George, telling us all about J-Force and the digital transformation that's happening at Jubilee Insurance. And more importantly, we're seeing this possibility that even in Kenya, where we see less than 3% of the market actually being insured, we think that technology is going to drive inclusion, helping people come into this sort of scenario, but also seeing how innovation and also using technology can allow us to reach more customers, more stakeholders in the marketplace in interesting and innovative ways so that we don't leave anyone behind. So thank you very much for joining us for this edition of the Pure Digital Passion Podcast with me, Moses Kemibaro, and we'll catch you in the next one.